Welcome back to another episode of the Block Runner Podcast. I'm your host, William, always here with your co-host, Iman.
What's going on, dude?
And on the sticks, we got TJ.
Hello.
And finally, we've been wanting to talk to the people behind Ordinals Wallet. We got Randy, co-founder.
The legends, dude.
Yeah. And
people is an understatement.
And also we got Josh, a.k.a. Elon Moist, co-founder and CEO of Ordinals Wallet. Thank you for joining us.
What a name, by the way.
Yeah. Fantastic name, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys have been making a lot of noise. I mean, and we've been following you guys. We've been obviously, as soon as we discovered BRC20s, we immediately put out like how to onboard into the ecosystem of BRC20s video, and then of course it's like Ordinals Wallet and Unisat. That was pretty much like the go-tos. Yeah, and so we got deeply ingrained into your platform, right? And then we've seen it develop as we've been developing, and we saw how you guys pretty much embrace almost everything as much as you can, and you guys are like you have a pace of delivery I've never seen before.
Yeah,
and we're kind of envious a little bit. Me personally,
jealous.
I'm like, damn, dude, how are you guys pulling this off? It's crazy, and I think a lot of it probably has to do with like your background, because you have a lot of experience developing with this type of technology that Bitcoin, I guess, that has ingrained within it. You know, the UTXOs and all this stuff, right? So, can you guys just break down like your origin, your history, how you've been involved in Bitcoin or Ethereum, whatever?
What's up with BSV?
And
dude?
BSV, yeah.
Randy, you got to go first. You got to segue into me, okay?
Okay.
We'll go back from the beginning. How did it all happen?
Yeah, it's a really long story, boys. But I got into Bitcoin in 2017. I was an graphic designer and art director in an advertising agency in Manhattan at the time, and I was taking a class at the School of Visual Arts, and one of the classes was a branding class. And so he said, do a brand for anything you want. So I came up with this app idea, but really it was just a brand. I had this really cool logo. It was like this weasel. It's up on my Dribble and stuff. But there was an idea behind it, and I reached out to this app development company called Celliflora, which was Josh's thing. It was a cold email through a contact form, and it was Josh on the other line. And so we had this discussion about how to make my app real, and he was giving me advice. He had already had this software development firm going. And yeah, he asked me about Bitcoin, and I said, oh no, I don't have any time for Bitcoin. I'm not interested in that. But at the same time, a friend of mine from college reached out to me about Bitcoin, and people knew I was entrepreneurial. I had a couple of side businesses going at the time. And then one of my friends from growing up reached out to me about Bitcoin. I said, okay, like this is a sign. Let me get into this. And when I looked into it, I kind of am extremely interested in Bitcoin as like an immutable ledger of information and like experience and memory, a historical archive. And so I wrote Josh this really long email, and he responded, hey, you should join the Crypto Aquarium, which was at the time the biggest crypto Telegram group. And I bought my first little bit of Bitcoin, ETH, and Litecoin or something. And yeah, from there, I started doing projects on Ethereum immediately. Like I got into this Crypto Aquarium. I got really involved. My Twitter started blowing up. I got like a retweet from Naval Ravikant. Mm-hmm. And then it was like, and I was really engaged on Twitter because I was all day at my advertising agency on the computer. And it was as if, you send your designs off to the client and they don't come back to you for a month. So I would have like a month of like just pretending to be working because I'm like, I have to go into the office and be at the computer. And I was just spending all my time on Twitter and like doing logos for people in the Crypto Aquarium. Like I did Icebergie's profile picture and like a ton of other stuff, but that one's probably he's probably the most popular influencer that I did a logo for. And then I got involved in Ethereum projects. We did Crypto All-Stars on ETH. We did Pepe DApp. And then those both were pretty big projects. And then ETH dumped to like $89 in 2018, 2019. Yep. And we had no interest in these projects, these NFT projects anymore. And we were getting called scammers like crazy for experimenting with NFTs. It was like, back then it was brutal.
Yeah.
You couldn't do NFTs back then. It hadn't reached this mainstream level that it is now. And so anybody who did do NFTs back then was just called out as like a total scammer, stealing everybody's coins, whatever. But we were really just interested in experimenting with blockchain tech. And right around that time, I was hired by Honeyminer and to run their marketing. At this point, I had blown up on Twitter. My projects were blowing up, and Honeyminer reached out to me. They were a funded startup. I don't know if you guys are familiar. They had it was like a consumer-facing mining. Like you could just download the software to your Mac and be mining Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they reached out to me, I said, "Yeah, I'll do it, but I won't do it without Josh." I really wanted to work with Josh, and we had been, doing projects here and there together. And we have a really good partnership going where we fill in each other's gaps in terms of like abilities and ways of thinking. And so, yeah, we did Honeyminer together. And right around the time that Honeyminer was being purchased, we started Twetch.
Mm-hmm.
And Twetch was really great. It blew up. There was like this whole mystery behind what it was and what it was going to be. And then, so we had like 10,000 followers before we even launched a product. And then we launched. It was this massive thing. We couldn't even keep up. We had to hire customer support people because in the beginning, in order to make a Twetch account, you first had to make a money button account.
Mm-hmm.
Similar to like, in order to like have an account on Magic Eden, you have to have a Unisat or a Phantom wallet or whatever. You had to have this money button, but the process was so much more convoluted back then. And so we had to walk hundreds and thousands of people through like the sign up process. So that was really fun, and Twetch blew up, and then we did Twetch Marketplace. And so we did pretty well there. And we did a bunch of physical NFTs, like 100 hats, and then the hats were numbered.
Mm-hmm.
And they had an NFT on the marketplace, but they were also physical. And then Ordinals came out in February, and it was kind of like a saving grace because Twetch growth, this is like how many years into the bear market, the growth was not what we had expected it to be after a few years in business, 3 years in business.
Yeah.
With Twetch. We thought it was really going to be huge. And then Elon takes over Twitter, and all of a sudden this whole appeal for a Twitter alternative that isn't going to ban you and that you can make money through is all of a sudden like Elon's just going to do that on Twitter.
Yeah.
So Ordinals comes out. We jumped right on it. I bought up all these domains. I got all the Twitter handles that I wanted. I made the brand, and I just set up a quick card.co email sign up form. And we had like 200,000 email signups within like a week. So we knew that we had something here. And so the rest is history. We've just been building on Ordinals.
Mm-hmm. Did you know that we're more than just a YouTube channel? We also built Mscribe, the first inscription platform built from the ground up for the metaverse on Bitcoin. Connect your bitmap Ordinals and use our tools to bring your community into the virtual realm. Support us by joining the movement at mscribe.io. Like, comment, and subscribe for the latest alpha. Back to the video. Josh, you got to explain the Elon Moist name, dude.
Yeah, well, it fits pretty good. I guess starting, all the way back to sort of the genesis block of where I'm at now was probably 2000, I want to say maybe 13, 14, as early as that. Really 2015, I think, was like I was sort of all in on this concept of Bitcoin while I've pretty much been like unemployed or self-employed since I went to university at Purdue. I sort of figured out how to pay the rent by making WordPress websites, roll that into like full service offerings of like a real company, and then started doing full stack app development, mostly iOS apps, but everything really. And that was all consulting and brand studio. And I kind of paired up some local guys, and we built a pretty strong team. And like Randy said, that's how he found me, is sort of through some of these apps that we were making on the side. And so I was basically consulting to self-fund side projects. And around that time, or a little bit before that time, me and a few friends discovered Bitcoin, and I kind of instantly was, the famous line in my head at least was like, it's PayPal with computers. I've been through some, like, I got scammed on eBay once, and I, learned the chargeback the hard way. And it pretty much immediately, I was like, okay, this is going to be big. All the friends and fraternity brothers and all that were calling me crazy. Later, they contact me, say, I'm sorry. But anyways, around that time, I also stopped using my personal Twitter. I think I might have created Coin using about 2017. So there's some time in there where I was just myself. And then I started to see the crypto Twitter develop around that time. It was right around 2016, 2017. And I created the character. Really, the original concept was Coin Yeezy, and that was like Kanye West. It was like, if you guys remember that.
Yeah.
And that was like funny because they got sued, and it was just kind of being like riffing off of that. And ironically, Randy here, he's taught me a lot about Twitter since these moments, but I'm the one that kind of dragged him into the crypto Twitter. Yeah. So I was like, hey, you got to get on Bitcoin, first off. Second off, you got to join this Telegram is really blowing up with crypto stuff. And I was like, you have to have a Twitter, and we kind of started off, and he immediately just like went from like 0 to like 40,000 followers. I've been much more like a slow, steady grow, I think I have like 33 or something. And so Randy really took off, and he knew how to like explode onto the scene, which is really his specialty. So around that, and then a little bit after that, so I was always kind of like a Bitcoin guy. I was interested in Ethereum. I was around, knew about the ICO, had some early Ethereum tokens, kind of understanding what that is. I knew about Counterparty. I knew about Colored Coin, and these concepts that could tokenize stuff. So I was already pretty well, like, I had all of this in my memory bank about like what we could do with Bitcoin or whatever. Really, at the time, I was pretty open-minded. I always was trying to figure out ways to do the stuff on Bitcoin, which I was running into a lot of walls for like 7 years on that. Mm-hmm. Long story short, Billy and I just keep in touch. We're talking about every business idea you can think of. We start connecting with other entrepreneurs that are doing other stuff. And we start launching what really at the time, there wasn't a standard for NFTs. They weren't even called NFTs. We were just calling them trading cards on the blockchain.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that's about the time I launched the Elon Moist. We launched a card on Pepe DApp. It's a Pepe cards on Ethereum instead of Counterparty. And it really did well in its time for like, I don't know, it's like 12 months, and we were doing all these themes of like characters, every type of character you can think of, John the Cafe, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. We were like turning them into Pepes, and Elon Musk was in a Pepe and he was Elon Moist. And that was kind of like, all of that was kind of happening at once. And we were just like basically not sleeping and working our like side jobs, consulting, whatever it was. But this was really becoming our main thing at that point. That's really in retrospect what was happening. So I had started out just kind of doing your consulting work, hustling, figuring out, knocking on doors, getting customers, making websites, making apps. We did, I don't know where you guys are from, but in the Midwest, there's a big company called JD by Ryder. They're basically like car sharks. They like sell cars at high interest rates. Well, I was developing just by chance. One of my employees went and got a job there. And I was developing their inventory app where they could VIN scan, and it would give them like live reports at an auction, like how to buy, what price to buy a car, what was the history, all this kind of put in one.
Okay.
So that was like my big kind of catch in terms of like, I finally had a business that was like paying all the bills, but I could really start to focus all this kind of jumbled up into one big fun experiment right around the time I met Randy. So we took that, and we've been basically parlaying all of our businesses and concepts into like the next thing, and each one's kind of getting bigger and bigger as we go over the last few years. And I guess that one thing I would want to mention that Randy missed is that it wasn't so much for me the price of Ethereum crashing, but we were like probably the first guys besides CryptoKitties, I would say, that figured out Ethereum fees could just essentially bankrupt your business model if you wanted to do anything under $20.
Yeah.
Because as soon as Pepe cards really picked up, these fees were $5, $10, $20. Mm-hmm. So we would have a $5 card, go to mint it that day. Maybe we have 1,000 customers, the fees were double the price of the card.
Right.
So we were just, running into all the walls. We at the time, and I was probably the first, I would say pretty confidently, that I was like telling our team, I was like, this isn't going to work, So we quickly accepted that, which is funny because in retrospect, if we would just stuck with the NFT game, we would have been like really in front of everything on Ethereum. But it seems to be working out for us in our favor now. I really started to spin off, particularly on things like, I looked at counterparty again. I already knew about that, but there wasn't a lot going on. At that time, a token called Ravencoin launched, and my previous business partner was working for Overstock, which was connected to Medici, and Medici's guys like Bruce Fenton and Tron. I forget his name, something crazy like Tron Black or something's his name. But they launched this Ravencoin, and what it was a fork of Bitcoin with tokens on it that used GPU mining. And we were doing Honey Miner. We were super into GPU mining. I was totally, for like years now, like obsessed with this idea that we could run operating systems, computers, the internet. We could do anything on Bitcoin. And Ravencoin like brought that back into my head. So we roll that Honey Miner, blah, blah, blah. We go through those phases, and then we get into Twetch. And that's where we touched on this BSV concept. And all BSV really is like sort of like a BTC with like no restriction. There's no like, they kept all the old features that Satoshi had, and then they like try to like lift all the limits. And we never really cared about like the politics of it. We were just kind of like, oh, we finally found this system that's going to do that it says, because we kept running into all these walls, whether it was this chain or that chain. There was just like always some catch. And with BSV, the technology was amazing, and we really thrived on the technology. But ultimately, the market was really rough. It has like a terrible PR problem with sort of like people that are like highly invested in it. So we always had to battle that instead. So we finally found the technology, but it wasn't like a market like Ethereum or BTC where it's just amazing. Like the people are very active. There's lots of liquidity. There's lots of things happening. People are interested in trying new stuff. And along came Ordinals. We were in Texas at the time. I was about to head off to take my family on our first family ski trip, and Ordinals popped up like the day before that. And I basically sent it to Harry, our dev, and said, you got to get on this. I think that's exactly what I said. And I went on a ski trip, and I think 3 days later, like the business, the product, and everything had been basically launched by Billy, and it just went crazy. And another fun fact that I'm riffing off of Randy here is that we actually had BRC20.com. We still own it. We got that from our time working on Twetch and Twetch Marketplace. And we were already conceiving these concepts of running tokens on Bitcoin, no matter what the Bitcoin, BTC, BCH, we didn't really, I personally don't really care or think about it that way. I kind of think about it like Bitcoin as like the system, whatever one kind of works the best is going to win.
Right.
But we had already like acquired that and had that in hand before the BRC20 concept came up in Ordinals. So we have been far ahead of the game for like many years. I mean, we really were living off of ramen for like, a solid 3-4 years. And we were able to just like stay the course, stay in the game, keep innovating it in every aspect that we could control on our side. And when Ordinals came, it just kind of brought the air back into everything and really gave us the validation we needed as entrepreneurs to say, we aren't crazy. We've been working in the right direction for a really long time now without any sort of validation from other people other than our customer base that we had built up. Twetch is a success in its own right, and it still exists today. But now things have changed to where we have to really go back and rethink like what we learned from that and what we learned from Ordinals Wallet and what those two things can kind of be in the future, hint, hint. But there's that's sort of like the past, the present and the future right there in our story, and how I started, how Billy and Randy started, and kind of where we're at now.
So what was it exactly about BSV in terms of like the development capability that you guys decided to kind of, was it the difference between like you had a project on Ethereum it was basically $5 per NFT, and then the fees just you knew the fees would just like kill the business. Was it that the reason why you went to BSV?
No, I wouldn't say that was the final thing, because you could cope with the fees and charge higher and all. It's bad business in terms of like the economics long term and all that. It's not really like providing like more throughput and all that. But it was the concept of putting data on chain.
Okay.
That really hooked us. We always wanted to do the data on the chain. And that was like the thing that we've been fishing for. And we finally hit it. You know, we hooked it.
Yes.
Go ahead.
We really didn't really want to build on Ethereum. We wanted to build on Bitcoin. And every time we would come up with this really cool idea for something that would work really well on Bitcoin, it would always be like, well, you can't do that on BTC. You can't do that. You're not allowed. It's spam, whatever. Everybody would always, even just putting the concepts out on Twitter and stuff, would always get met with this crazy backlash. And back then, the laser eye maxis, no building on Bitcoin allowed was like the main narrative. But yeah, so any opportunity to build on Bitcoin was we were interested in that right away. And then when you look at BSV, it scales. Fees are like fractions of a penny. You could split up a single penny like over 1,000 people in a single transaction. You know, so all of that stuff, the micro payments, the data on the blockchain, you know, so somewhat immutable data. It was very enticing to us, and it was already concepts that we had come up with for building on Bitcoin. And then all of a sudden you could do it. That was pretty cool.
So what's the development ecosystem differences like between BSV and Bitcoin? Like, what are the trade-offs that you've had to make between building on both chains?
Well, in BSV, we had to do everything. There was no really competitive. There's like one or two other sort of entrepreneurial groups or people that are doing stuff that are interesting. Where on BTC, it's like every day is like action, ordinals, right?
Yeah.
And people build stuff. So we're leveraging other people's and what they're doing and how productive and like the good things they make. BRC20 is an example, or like certain indexers
Bitmap.
or like systems. Bitmap, a great example. Yeah. We're leveraging that now, and we're like collaborating on a much bigger scale.
I see.
Yeah, I would say the difference is that on the one hand, we had to build everything versus, like Josh just said, we had to build everything over there versus we're able to leverage other developments on BTC now, which is a benefit. But from the user experience perspective, like the BSV chain had like instant settlements and stuff like that. So it was very different. There was no fee selection. There was no issue with like, you know, for example, BRC20 where you have to inscribe and then wait for the inscription to come in after it gets mined. And everything was instant, a lot more like the way that you'll see Solana working now, where it's like you could just move and go and be fast.
Yeah.
And that was definitely one of the hurdles with Bitcoin. So the plus side was moving to BTC is that the development ecosystem is much more robust and flourishing. And then the downside is like the hurdles that you have to go through with the scaling caps and stuff like that.
Yeah, though there's like from a pure like production standpoint, there's just like, if you can imagine like two different factories, like the BTC Ordinals factory has got like hoops and loops and speed bumps and all kinds of like things tied together with tape in terms of like how you get it out. But and you know, sort of the reality of all of this is that still is like that's still more valuable, you know, at this current time. And you know, we're just types of people who don't have to have like this sort of political bias. We just really want to grow as much as possible, learn as much as possible, service as many customers as possible.
Sure.
So you have to make trades for that, short-term and long-term trades. And ultimately, like, you know, it's not just like financially gaining, it's like all of the knowledge of like working with now thousands of customers every day instead of hundreds of customers every day. That's the biggest value that we basically have gotten from the BTC Ordinals ecosystem, I would say. So, you know, it's sort of like it's just apples to apples, really. It's all about like you can have a perfect system, but if like you can't actually service customers on that system, then what you can do is go ahead and put your time and energy elsewhere and try to like get as really good at servicing your customers and as knowledgeable as possible about what a perfect system should be while you like, and then if that bridge ever comes, we'd be perfectly fine kind of going where we need to go, whether that's Ethereum or BSV or BTC or whatever. We have our minds in the right places to do that. So that's like sort of like abstractly, that's what we need to accomplish.
Right. So what is it about Bitcoin that has gravitated, has the gravity to pull people and to have like an ecosystem of developers building, bitmaps, BRC20s, things like that? What is it about Bitcoin that has enabled that rather than it's happening on BSV or any other chain?
I would say it's the number one market cap coin. Yeah. It's got the brand.
It's got the brand.
Okay.
So the provenance, it's like you don't have everyone. That's the first place everyone goes to like experience this new world.
Yeah.
And I think that people don't really talk about this as much. I know Leonidas is pretty big on this, but the historical nature of like you can leverage the history of Bitcoin by using ordinals in a way that you can't do on any other chain because there really is no history in that same way. From the inception, the white paper, the first block, and those coins are gone. And then, like things that happen throughout history, like Silk Road. And then we have all these rare sats because of all that stuff. You just don't have that narrative, that history and that conversation on any other chain, at least not in the same way that's so enticing.
Don't you think that we're going to run into the same problem that you guys ran into with Ethereum with fees as soon as like the bull run happens? And
look, if you want to do a mint on BTC for $20 and the quality of the images is, you're talking, if you want to do $20 mint, you're talking at least $20, but upwards to like $1,000 for the fees. So it's like, it's gonna, if you want to do an NFT mint, a successful NFT mint, you really have to take into account lowering the quality of your artwork in exchange for having an affordable price. Whereas with other chains like Solana and BSV, you don't have that problem. It's free to mint on the fee side. And then the person who does the art and the people who help them develop out that project and launch that project, they get to keep the money that's paid for this art.
It's basically it's like the way I see it, it's like being very objective and like harsh is like you get taxed on BTC before you ever like make money. It's like the Soviet Union. And then like Solana and BSV are like, Singapore and America, and like it sounds really funny because the sort of public like opinion is the opposite of that. And sort of like the propaganda machine is like taught everybody otherwise. But when you come in there to do business and look at the system and you say, I want this, this machine or this machine, there's no comparison. It's just like, that's the reality of the situation. There's like a tax involved, there's a big government involved, both with the BTC core and with the ordinals. And, our job as the sort of industrialist of all this is to try to navigate that as wisely as possible, try to, help even guide them at times. Like recently with the inscription number dilemma, like what they're going to change the numbers of these NFTs on BTC, right? The ordinals, we immediately took the opportunity and thanks to Randy really encouraged me to like go and say what we really believed was the right thing. And my take was particularly like, do nothing, just leave it as it is. We need to spend time and energy elsewhere. And that's pretty much what's happening right now as of like even the last 2 days that's come out from the Ord core team. So, we have to navigate everything as wisely as possible to stay in the game, to try to keep growing, try to keep moving forward. We have to pick our battles. We can't win everything all the time. We have to try to move this stuff forward like one step at a time. So we're just trying our best to like use our judgment and do that.
Did you know that we're more than just a YouTube channel?
We also built MetaZone, the first app store for the metaverse.
Buy, sell, and explore a new class of digital assets like our flagship game, Rovi.ai.
Support us by collecting your digital assets through MetaZone at metazone.io.
Like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated.
Back to the video.
Yeah, so I only have one more question, and kind of in regards to like development and kind of background stuff is, you were talking about if you have like a high resolution image and you wanted to inscribe that, it would be very expensive. But what about the scenario where the bull run happens and there's 100,000 transactions with very small images, right? You know, very low resolution images. That congestion, isn't that enough to where like it really puts a stop to most businesses on Bitcoin?
Yes. Yeah.
It might.
Yeah.
I would say that we saw recently a 2% to 5% little run up to 30K on Bitcoin, and Ordinals went crazy. I would predict, if I was going to be making a prediction here, that if there's a big bull run and fees are insane, you're going to see a lot more Ordinals purchases and trades than you're going to see inscriptions, which is what you're seeing now. Everyone's inscribing right now.
Sure.
I would agree with that.
Interesting. Okay.
That's basically,
I would say, like, in terms of the fee, like, we did see this already. The reason I say it's a firm yes, in terms of like it's going to like halt the economy, is when BRC-20 came out, everybody's going crazy over it, and it essentially like halted the economy for like 2 days. You know, there was just not any more inscriptions happening until things like calmed down. So it basically created like a JPEG like breadline, and people had to stop, and it was too crowded and too crazy to get the bread and so on. So that'll definitely happen. But I do believe Randy's correct in his assumption that if the market cap overall BTC is increasing, then there'll be more like trading of the assets themselves. Just sort of people like moving in and out of positioning. You know, they have so much like capital gain on their asset that they're like willing to take different risk now, and that'll definitely play out, I think.
Yeah.
Do you think the likelihood of I guess the infrastructure, migrating more towards a layer 2 discussion, because we saw this play out in Ethereum.
Yeah, that was my next question.
We experienced it ourselves with our own platform. Yeah, we had a solid little business going, and then as soon as like all of NFTs as a sector became mainstream, you know, we built little games in Decentraland where, you know, there are microtransactions that people can kind of participate within. And quickly, no longer do they become feasible to even like attempt because of the fee.
The fees
dilemma.
were more expensive.
So us as developers, we were forced to quickly, adopt these layer 2 providers, right? Polygon specifically. So I already see the conversations and the narratives forming, and I think Casey Rodimer's like re-entrance in the space was kind of like focused around this with drive chains, and then now he's trying to come up with like kind of offload some of the inefficiencies that exist with BRC-20. So, I mean, given all this, I guess the focus is everybody's aware and everybody can kind of like see this dilemma coming, this meteor about to strike.
Yeah.
It's going to happen no matter what. So do you think the infrastructure can be solved in time, or is it all just going to end up on Stacks? Because I think it feels like Stacks is positioned.
It's a big stack psyop, isn't it? Yeah. You know, one could easily like come to that conclusion. I've been following Stacks for I was an early investor in Stacks. Just a disclaimer, I don't have any association with it now, but I went to like the first Stacks Berlin event. I was living there at the time.
Blockstack.
Blockstack, it was called at the time. Yeah. You know, I've been following this play for a long time. I will say that the Rune token protocol, despite like the ordinal core like group team like having like kind of rug pulling like the initial wave of that excitement, it buys us some time. It's like it's leaning into more like efficient Bitcoin token system. And I do think that the next wave, like, so Rune's going to play out, and then the next thing will be like, you know, I think that one last like push or like puff of the cigar of like Lightning, like a Lightning network, you know, Bitcoin's going to have a run, most likely. I think we're all kind of assuming that. When that happens, fees go up, and that's the perfect opportunity for everyone to advertise as best as they can this Lightning network solution. It's waiting for its day. So they're going to have like one last go at that. And then after that, and now the timeline of this, I'm not totally sure on. Maybe it's 1 year, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 10. But after that, then we go back to, we have like sort of these old core and core devs. They're getting old, they're retired, they made their new wave money. And we're going to go back to talking about the real problem at hand, and that's the underlying system. It's been changed so many times. It's become so inefficient. They've made bad changes to it. That's becoming objectively true through the expressions of ordinals and the user experience of ordinals and our experience as a business on BTC ordinals. All of this is becoming like, we don't have to go tell people this. They can see it, experience it, they understand it. They're getting that firsthand knowledge of like how bad or like inefficient or however you want to say this. I just call it bad. The system underlying is, and then we can make adjustments there. And these adjustments don't have to be some like shell shocking change. It's just a matter of like, we can double the block space, or we can evaluate again, like more innovations and using more efficient, code to like do the tokens. That's what basically Run is doing, right? Rune is like coming back more to BTC. Once we have the problem of the high fees, then the Lightning Network, which is not BTC at all, you're just going off the ledger, will like be the big sell. But ultimately, we know everyone's desire is to use Bitcoin. Everyone wants to be on Bitcoin. Everyone understands the value. As soon as you have your first experience with Bitcoin, you really, truly do understand it. And at least the power of it without being able to explain it sometimes. And that's what people are it's going to play out that way, in my opinion.
Yeah, I wrote a thread about layer 2 and side chains and about how they really don't work. And it's not necessarily because they don't work in the technology. It's because they create an added layer and complication on the experience side. And ultimately, the users don't want to have to understand how everything works in order to use it. They don't want to use Bitcoin by using X chain and then go back to Bitcoin. Nobody wants to do that. And that's why Solana and Ethereum and layer 1 chains are so successful, and why Polygon and whatever other Lightning Network and other side chains and twos are unsuccessful. There's a reason for that. And it's because the user experience is not ideal. And the ideal user experience is easy to understand. I'm using Bitcoin to trade NFTs, for example. That's a very simple concept, and you don't really have to think too hard about it. Now, the reason why you do have to think really hard about it right now with regards to UTXOs and network fees and congestion, if you don't understand the Bitcoin the block space is capped, and that's why fees are so high, and we need to understand UTXOs in order to like make transactions often. Like, you don't need to have any of this stuff built in the system. You can make the system way more efficient and way more simple, and by doing so, you will have an experience that is easy to understand and widely adopted. Now, I guess that's basically the end of.
I got to tell a story here because this is like too relevant not to share, but I was in Miami, Bitcoin Ordinals conference, the same time the Bitcoin Magazine big conference is going on. So I was at both. I was speaking at the Ordinals conference as Ordinals Wallet. Go to the BTC conference. Our good friends are the founders of the Bitcoin ATMs, BTC ATM. I think they just rebranded to that. Bitstop formerly. They have their ATMs, both BTC, but they're creating a Lightning one. And these guys are real Bitcoin guys. They want to use Bitcoin, but they're creating a Lightning one, and they're going through the concept. They're getting people to come to the booth and try it out. And I believe it's David Bailey of Bitcoin Magazine. He's there with me, and we get introduced through my friend Drew, who's the founder of this Bitcoin ATM company. And we start to talk about, hey, he's basically saying, hey, sorry we didn't have you come and talk at this conference. Is there had a big fallout with all the people, whether Ordinals is good or bad. There's all this drama going on. And he's basically, hey, you can't come and talk at this event because, you might say something like, we need to change the protocol, or the blocks need to be bigger, or X, Y, Z. And I had a little fun with that. Long story short, I asked him, is Lightning Bitcoin? And his answer was yes. I made it after a long time. He took a while, but I finally got him to say yes. We walk over to the ATM, or the Lightning ATM. We go through the experience of buying it, which is already like added steps and confusion. I looked directly to the people working the booth at the ATM, and I said, after we did it all, and I said, now is this Bitcoin? And they said no. So this people, they're making a Lightning Network ATM, right? For these Lightning points, basically. And I went through this whole sort of 15-minute back and forth with someone who had a strong opinion about it. And then we went into a real life example with a real business, with real customers. They have hundreds of thousands or even millions of customers. You got to call and ask them. They're big. And I said, is this Bitcoin? And their answer is no. And that their customers have to go through extra steps to understand that it's not Bitcoin, and that the early tests are basically giving them extra problems because of the confusion around the concept of what a Lightning voucher is versus like getting a Bitcoin from the Bitcoin ATM. So that's a real life example. I don't have to make this up. It's not like some conspiracy. This is the reality of dealing with like all these like new, sort of layer twos or whatever. It's ultimately just companies trying to sell you their rails for the payment. And the customers and the investors in Bitcoin, ultimately, whether they know it or not, they want to use Bitcoin. And that's what we've seen year after year. Every time we build a business, every time we offer a service, every time we launch a new idea or a new experiment, what happens is the more we offer a Bitcoin native experience, the better off we do. And the better the experience is going to be, despite challenges on BTC and Ordinals and the system itself. Go use ordinalswallet.com. It's an amazing experience. Thanks to Randy here. It's like we really think about the customers and we really understand how to refine it, even with all the challenges that we have. And people want to use Bitcoin. So we're going to continue focusing on that as long as we see that.
I just want to make a last point on this sidechain and Lightning Network topic, and that is that imagine the Bitcoin core team would it be embracing Ordinals right now, as opposed to the way that it is now, which is completely averse to the whole concept. What would you end up with if you had a better experience and a more efficient system around Ordinals? Is what you would have is a thriving market, more interest in the market. The market is dictating the underlying technology in a way that is it's better for the customer, and therefore it would be big news. Like it would be huge news to say, okay, Ordinals is the majority of Bitcoin transactions, and so therefore we're going to take what these people want to use Bitcoin for seriously, and we're going to make it better for them. And the market will flourish, the economy will grow, and ultimately what you will end up with is more innovation, more real practical uses of Bitcoin, more use of Bitcoin in general, and more opportunities for people to come in, start new businesses, have success, and make a living in this ecosystem. And right now, all of that is capped by the Bitcoin core team saying, no, we don't like this. And so we're not going to think about it at all. And we're not going to help them at all.
Not just that, they want to, remove it. They've made certain proposals to completely remove the idea. So it's gone. It's not just like ignoring it. It's gone as far as like proposing removing it and stopping it altogether. So
I have a comment.
That's the risk of us doing business. We have to deal with these types of people.
Right. So I have a comment / question, but let me see if I can set this up. So we have history on Ethereum, like Iman was saying, building a business, and it quickly slowed down because of the fees. So, and with our experience, we knew that a side chain would be our solution, right? So we picked Matic and we went with Polygon, that transition. But you guys went through a different experience than we did, right? With BSV. With BSV, you guys saw that there is a main chain where you can sustain a business. The only difference was there wasn't a whole lot of people in BSV to really sustain thousands of people, right, as a business, right? But when you guys came to Bitcoin, there were thousands of people, and they wanted to, to buy these ordinals and do inscriptions and all that. And you guys had a business with hundreds of thousands of people now. So you're basically suggesting that we can have like a very successful economy on top of Bitcoin if the underlying technology makes an update that sort of, and correct me if I'm wrong, that sort of mimics what BSV technically does.
More like it's almost like removing problems more than it is like updating or adding new.
Sure.
Right? Like I personally look at it that way. Yeah, I mean, you could say it that way. Really, we're looking at a situation that right now the biggest argument towards making any type of change, which we're completely comfortable like saying we believe this change it will happen or whatever eventually anyways, whether we're a part of it or not. It's the biggest thing is, well, we don't need it yet because we don't have that high of fees. We don't have enough customers. We don't have this and that.
Sure.
Yeah, but the day we do, we're gonna have a big problem, right? So like, what's the number? It's really the opportunities to play for keeps. We can solve all the problems of all the blockchains if we just move the right direction with Bitcoin. We don't have to really have all those things. Think about Polygon. Who owns Polygon? One of the biggest criticisms of like Solana, BSV, and there's a number, and Polygon will be right here in the same table. There's like, who owns it? Who's the leaders of it? Well, I'll tell you right now that I would be willing to put some chips on the table that like the Polygon system or even a Solana system, these things are IP developed by a company. If you go dig far enough down the line,
absolutely,
there's someone who owns it, someone who controls it, they're licensing it. You may be able to do whatever you want, but at the end of the day, MetaMask itself was the same concept and it's sold, right? It's sold, it's owned now. And it's just more clear about who owns it and so on. But that dream only can exist for so long. These things are being built for a reason, right? So I'm not even really against any of the stuff. I'm very pro like the competition of these experiments, just to be completely clear where I stand on this. But that's the reality. So, and BTC has the same problem though, that it hasn't been commercialized. It's well distributed, which is the gift that BTC gave to the world, is that anyone who came early could get it and so on. But it has controllers. There are people who control the keys to BTC.
Yeah.
There's a GitHub, and you can't get a hold of them to talk to them.
Yeah.
It's the worst customer service in the world. It's like really like this Kafka-esque novel. Like it's just playing out where you like can't actually get a hold of anyone. You can't actually get through the gate. You can't, if you're asking permission, you're going to get nothing in return. That's what we experience with BTC. That's just the facts. That's it.
Yeah.
It's not meant to make anybody happy or sad. It's just the reality of that situation. Let's just be honest about that. And I think if we can be honest about that, and this is becoming more of a theme with Ordinals really bringing this to a head, is like that, then, I'm a lot more comfortable just operating in that system as long as that we're aware of the system.
Sure.
What's the game? Who's in control of the game? Who's making the rules? Let's just be clear about that. And then we can exist in harmony. We don't have to have all this trouble. We don't want trouble. We want progress, production, people working, people,
businesses,
people getting value from this, right? Like that's the only way this actually lasts. Billy and I talk about this every day, every single day. We're like, how do we keep moving in the direction of like really helping people?
Yeah.
If we do not do that, we might make some money, but then we just aren't going to have anything at the end of the day.
Right.
It's just not, it's not going to work. So we have to really think about that. And a good start for that is being honest about the situation, admitting where the problems are, what are the realities, what are the rules that we're playing by, and then we can start to navigate that, and we can all work together a lot easier, even if we completely disagree, because we know where we each stand. It's so good. The clarification is so important in any relationship, and it's no different than in cryptocurrency. I don't know why people want to try to deny that. You have to have clarity and boundaries and understand where each other stand and who's in charge of what. And if we have that, we can be productive, even if we don't agree.
Right.
And Ordinals gave us a little bit of breath on that.
The one thing that is like a revelation to people that most don't know is that the unlimited block size, no block size limit cap, unlimited block space doesn't mean that you have unlimited block space. It means that there's a market for block space. So if there's only 2 megabytes of transactions that need to get into the next block, then the next block is actually just 2 megabytes. Mm-hmm. But if there's 10, or if there's 20, or if there's a gigabyte, it can go and scale to that size for the next block. So like having a block size market is actually something that most people don't really know exists, and it exists on BSV and it works, is really interesting. So if there's no demand for block space now, and everything is 2 megabytes for the next 10 days, but then a bull run happens, and now there's demand for a gigabyte of block space, it can just naturally scale to that level and then scale back down when the demand goes down. And that's a really interesting method of doing this technology. And beyond that, if it scales to that point where it's staying at 100 megabytes or a gigabyte or whatever it is, now you have sustained revenue for miners when the
2140
when the subsidy ends.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you said subsidy, because we went through this. We had multiple businesses, and one of them we were talking to another partner of ours, and we were writing the halving was I think it's like the last halving we were talking about it. He's calling it a block reward. I said it's not a block reward, it's a subsidy. It's just something that's temporary there to like keep it going in the system. It's designed that way, but eventually it goes away. It's not really a reward, it's a subsidy, and it will go away. And I won't even explain what happens after it goes away, but I just encourage everyone who does listen to this, I'm assuming they know crypto and Bitcoin, and that's why we're here, and that's the audience. Really, really think about that. Please, just like, don't just respond. Think deeply about what it means when there is no more block subsidy. And a block subsidy is every block mine, there's like Bitcoins released, right? There's like new supply being released. That will eventually run out or get really low over time. Have a look at that. And that subsidy goes away. And it's by design to go away. So it is intentional. And it's intentional for a reason. And that subsidy is going to be replaced by what? If it's designed that way, then it must have, be designed that way with this intention. And we need to really think about deeply what that is. I'm not going to tell people what the answer is. I have a concept of what is going to happen. If everyone thinks about that, we can be a little ahead of the game, because we need to make Bitcoin usable for people long enough that when they come and we finally achieve that goal, that we have a good plan in place. We need to think and we need to plan about what to do.
There's a really great Satoshi quote on this topic specifically, where he talks about the reason why the subsidy halves every 4 years. And he says the reason why it halves every 4 years is because every 4 years we're going to see such an increase in demand to use the blockchain that fees will eventually replace the block reward. And this is a Satoshi quote. I encourage everyone to go and look at what Satoshi says about this stuff. And he had a plan for when the block reward ends, and there's a reason. And like Josh said, there's a reason why every 4 years it halves. And that's because every 4 years, the demand for block space and the number of transactions on chain and the fees will start to replace and bounce. Like by now we're about to have what is it? 3.125 coins or whatever.
Yeah.
3.125 coins. So by now we were supposed to have a fee market that was pretty much equal to the revenue earned from block reward. But because Satoshi left like a little bitch, now we have to do a block cap.
True. Yeah,
I really feel like he bitched out. I really feel like he bitched out, and I harbor a lot of resentment.
I heard some rumors he's going to sign soon, but I don't know.
I've never heard Satoshi be called a bitch, but that's the first.
Satoshi deeply hurt Will's feelings.
That's my lord, dude. Don't disparage my lord.
I wanted to say this Satoshi quote that related to that is he says, there's going to be nothing or a lot of transaction volume, and that Bitcoin doesn't really hit a ceiling. These are such I just don't understand how that's overlooked.
Bitcoin doesn't hit a
anybody who actually cares about Bitcoin. Like, let's just appreciate the person that created this and their design a little bit, and just acknowledge that was said. Again, we don't have to draw a bunch of hard lines, but if we just start thinking, all of this can change as fast as people's mind can change about what needs to happen for this to be great.
Yeah.
And as a CEO of Ordinals Wallet, I'm also the CEO of Bitcoin, and that's what I propose is we head in this direction.
Yes.
And it just, I hope that we do. I really do.
While we're talking about this, I mean, I've done a lot of deep diving on this topic, and in his emails with Mike Hearn, Satoshi specifically says, when Mike Hearn was talking about Namecoin, he was like, we would rather have one network than many networks, because we want to have one big market, one big economy on Bitcoin. And what we have now is exactly what he was talking against back then. And the reason why we have it is because Bitcoin is so limited. So I'm just going to put that out there and we can move on.
But just to be clear, I think I speak for Iman as well with we're 100% aligned with you guys. I think I think it makes sense what's happening with ordinals. That is what's going to pay the miners. I think that's significantly important. I know that by 2140, when there are no fees, something needs to be able to sustain this security, right?
Yeah.
And that security needs to be paid by fees. And if people are just sending each other Bitcoin just to send each other Bitcoin without any other motivation, I don't think, we're going to be able to cover this level of security into the future, right?
Yeah. I mean, think about it just one step further. We're having fun here now. If the argument against that would be that then the fees just go up, okay, or everyone's going to use XYZ token system off the chain. But the main argument is that, well, then the fees will go up, and the miners get sustained, and like that's like your sacrifice to like keeping the system alive. It's a very parasitic system, and the alternative to that is we allow the market to develop around the fees, and then instead of having like this like very monopolized top-down decision making of the fee market, we allow these guys to compete for that with the block space, and then we as customers and our or business owners and our customers get to benefit from the cost savings of these guys competing versus like a single entity making the decision on what the fee should be. That's what they're proposing, is that, well, we're just going to charge you more. And then what happens is that it's very ugly. It's really only the people at the top, ultimately at the end of the day, are going to be able to move the money.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that are going to be able to capitalize off of everybody else. And it's really parasitic, really is the word. It's not hard to play that out. That's like a very easy exercise to run in your mind. So, our goal today, like talking about, we're talking very freely and very honestly, but it's also like, I just want to put concepts on the table versus like try to tell people what to think.
Sure.
You play these things out.
Yeah.
And it makes for an interesting game.
Just think about it. Good technology, you don't work for good technology. There's no reason why I should have to make sacrifices to use good technology. Good technology works for me.
Sure.
It helps me. It's
100%.
Convenient to me. And that's why I use it. For example, Amazon and whatever else.
Yeah.
It's like, if it doesn't work for me, then it just isn't good technology. And if I have to work for it, it's probably not going to last very long or get a mainstream adoption in the way that we expect it to.
So, we totally agree. So let's go back to the current environment. So we have an impending bull run, in 18 months or so, and there's I don't think there's a feasible chance that we're going to, clear the limitations of Bitcoin with an update within the 18 months. So how feasible do you believe it to be to like clear these limitations, right? At some point. I think this narrative is accurate. I think it's true, and I think everybody will come to the same conclusion as all of us here on the call. But how long do you think is it going to take to make this change?
Oh, I think I have a lot. I can definitely address this. So first off, I'd like to make it clear that the change or it's the word change, update, whatever you prefer. It's simple. We don't have to unlock everything right away. There's basic concepts of like, we can just increase the data, the amount of data we can put in like an ordinal, the size of an ordinal. We can just like very easily double that, and it would help reduce the cost of that within the block, right?
Sure.
So that would be like a very simple step. And what that would do is it would allow the miners and the core developers who hold the actual code, right? It would allow these guys to first signal that they actually are in power and they have all the power. That would be like a good signal for the market. It'd actually make Bitcoin more investable. It would establish a communication line between market demands with the controllers, the government. So then the government can adjust its policy based off of the market, and we can have lockstep changes to do that. And I would personally be happy to commit the prime of my life to managing that process, and I can guarantee its success. I know exactly what to do. I know how to do it. I can lead people, and I know enough about not only Bitcoin, but actual building of technologies and the full stack across the board.
Sure.
So, that's the gift that God gave me, and that's what I do every day with my team. And I can tell you right now, it's not that complicated. There's a very simple process to this. And a bigger part of the actual code change is establishing the communication and a cadence, like a movement. What happened is this factory got shut down after some time, and we need to like re-oil everything. and just start to get the change moving. And once we do that, we will be able to actually make real changes that start to add up and really compound to actually make the system better, to make the fees lower, this, and that. Any technical, it's all technical detail after that. For me, I'm looking at businesses, software, doesn't matter if it's a farm. I look at everything I look at, I'm abstracting it to how we can like make it the most productive, serve us the most, give us the best quality of life, the best outcome possible. And oftentimes it's really, really simple. And more times than not, it's about communication and very clear responsibilities and who's in control of what. Defining that will go a very long way with BTC. Right now, if you want to go tweet, if you want to do a little experiment, anybody watching, you guys should try it. Block runner, go tweet. Who owns Bitcoin? Who is in control of Bitcoin? You're going to get a lot of answers. It's going to be really fun for you. You're going to get answers like no one, Satoshi, but he left. You're going to get Bitcoin Core. You're going to get we are all Satoshi. We are all owners of Bitcoin. You're going to get 5, 10 different answers. That is a problem. Okay, how can you ever run a family, a business, a community, a society, a world where no one actually knows who's in charge of what? There's no actual like responsibility being taken. I personally would be willing to take all of that responsibility should I be given the opportunity, and I think it's all completely blown out of proportion. It's a very fixable problem. It's a pretty simple problem. And anyone who tells you otherwise is, I'm not sure what they're doing. You guys make your own decisions, right? I don't want to make accusations. I'll just tell you that I know what I know, and I'm confident in what I have over here. And I can tell you that the problem is not as complicated as we've been told.
So Josh, are you saying that this is bigger than just submitting a pull request on Bitcoin Core?
Oh, absolutely. It's about cleaning house. It's about saying, okay, what's the classic phrase? What is it? The clean the swamp, drain the swamp, right?
Yeah.
It's like the funny part about all this is we don't have to even get rid of anybody. What we need, again, I just want to say it one more time, is we need the people there to be very transparent about what they have control over.
Yeah.
And once we understand that, we can make solutions and make a plan, and everything can work out from there. That's step one. We can figure out who's the best person in those roles and whatnot after we've defined who's responsible for what, because then we can start to pass those shortcomings and certain things in the system to those people responsible for them. And then we start to create that feedback loop that's going to start to really, things come kind of naturally after that.
Okay.
That's how the world works. That's how humans work. Right. People want to do good. And as soon as we have a feedback loop that shows that things aren't going good and that the person that's supposed to make them good isn't willing to make them good, things will change.
All right. Do you guys have 10 more minutes? We have one question that we kind of want to go through.
We got 10 more minutes.
Okay. So
maybe 11.
What happened with Runes? Like, what was your perspective with everything that happened with Runes?
What do you think, Randy?
Yeah, I knew this one was coming. This is the big one that everyone's going to want to hear about.
Yeah.
Well, what happened with Runes was Casey came out with a protocol spec in a blog post, and there were a million ways that you could implement this protocol spec. We came out with our own, and a lot of people said it wasn't right, but there was nobody really to say whether it was right or wrong, because there were many different ways that you could build this thing. And the ultimate answer for who's right and who's wrong is whether or not it's practical and whether or not it's usable. And ours was. So from our consideration, it was right. What happened was there was no consensus on the right protocol spec. We came out with a way to mint these tokens, these Runes tokens. And then immediately after we launched our product, Casey basically came out and said he's going to come out with a better way to implement the Runes protocol, and that he would invalidate anything that came before his. And so ultimately we were pushed back by red tape and I think politics. People don't like us in the space. And Yeah.
Why do you
I
think?
wouldn't even say, I wouldn't even say people don't like us. We have a lot of customers and a lot of happy people. It's the Ord core developers. I think there's like 2 or 3, and I've met some of them myself. They're very uncomfortable with the fact that we are taking what we believe is a good implementation and developing it as fast as possible, or we are very uncomfortable with us having our own opinions outside of how tokens and NFTs and things can work on Bitcoin, and that's totally their right to have that. I think
why are they uncomfortable with it?
I think because we are generally taking our own ideas and bringing them to life. And really the only power that a government or core development group in Bitcoin has is to be the ultimate, like, first to say how it goes and the last to say how it ends. Like, that's the only real, like, power that they ultimately have, because groups like ours, our organization, we're focused on providing services as best as possible, the most uptime as possible, as fast as possible. We took a huge risk with Rune. We like Rune. Rune is great. Just to be clear, we did that because we believe in it. We went for Rune. We launched that in 24 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
And we were the first and only in the market with a mentor, and people were using that, and that we talked about it as we did that, and said, hey, there's a big risk here. We could be doing everything wrong, according to like what the ordinal core code owners don't like. And even if they do like it, they are generally signaling that they will just change their mind based off of reasons, to make sure that whatever we did first is sort of like devalued. Sure. So we took a huge risk with that. We stuck our necks out there big time. And a lot of people seem to understand that. Some didn't. Like, that was a huge risk for us, because our value as Ordinals Wallet is being the best possible service provider around ordinals and things. So we have this system here where we have to be very smart about how we decide to, like, put what products and services we offer, what do we charge. There's so many decisions to make around the Ordinals Wallet brand, and we took the risk with that one. We know what the risk is. Yeah. And ultimately, it's hard to say we got it wrong, but we got rubbed. They came out and said something different than what we were doing, and that invalidated that. So,
Josh, can you explain why not continue with your implementation of Runes? Why does it need to be recognized by the org?
Well, you can still mint this implementation, but ultimately we're trying to be in harmony with the most amount of people. That's it's not just a business decision. It's like, that's like part of like how we operate, is we want to grow. We want all of this to grow. The business, Bitcoin, Ordinals, our customer base, NFTs, tokens, trading. Really, what are we really talking about? Communication and commerce. That's what we want to build, businesses that facilitate that at a new scale and new ways people never thought were possible. So we're trying to play as nicely as possible to get the most amount of people to have the advantage of using Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
I really was thinking it could go one of two ways. If we continue with our implementation, and we would have built it out by now, you would have it in your wallet and whatever else. But what you would have ended up seeing if we went full on with our implementation is you would end up seeing you'd probably have 4 implementations that were different, Rune's implementations that were different by now. Yeah, and ultimately that would just fractionalize the market, and it might kill Runes altogether. So rather than have this convoluted, complicated and confusing system where there's multiple implementations of Runes, we're constantly dealing with customer support because people don't understand why it works on our website but not somebody else's website. Sure. And all of these things that come from us going full steam ahead with whatever we think is the right thing to do now. Rather than that, we would rather have a unified understanding of Runes, a healthy seed that could potentially grow into a big, beautiful tree rather than little tiny plants all over the farm. And so that was kind of the one reason why we said, okay, we're not going to go and fight this. But the other reason was Casey's next blog post that came out more recently. Harry looked at and said that we have a good chance at having backwards compatibility with the Runes tokens that were minted on our website. So now we can still use the unified Runes implementation, but still secure the Runes mints and tokens that our customers minted. And whether or not like that's recognized on other websites is up to other business owners, but we can probably still provide that service for our customers.
So
on the Casey implementation.
So when you guys were developing your Rune implementation, roughly you guys completed it 20 hours after that blog post. Were you guys under the assumption that Casey wouldn't further develop the Rune concept on his own, like it would be left to the community?
Yeah, I mean, he had already said that he wasn't really sure if he was even going to build it.
That's sort of the catch of all of this, this propaganda rhetoric machine that's going on with the core development. And Bitcoin is like, there's always like, oh, I might or I might not, and it always gives them an out. It's all about responsibility. No one wants to really, everyone's passing the buck around. They don't want to actually say, I'm going to do this. This is how it should be done. And then we can really like buy into that. There's no opportunity to do that. It's a very toxic relationship that way.
I see.
But I would say my honest, just purely my perspective was that it would be like us and 2 or 3 other people, which is popped up really quick in Indexer, that would just be working on this, and we would get the ground level going. It'd be like some basic spec that we agreed on, this and this and that, this encoding, this code should be like this, and this is how the token should be set up. And we would kind of get the ball rolling, and then everyone kind of would pile in on that. We were really hoping for that, because that would be so efficient. We would already be, a week into this Rune token development. We would already have tons of trading and action going on to like let us know if this is actually working and as it said it's supposed to. So we missed a lot of knowledge gain from letting that just run, in terms of like the bigger ecosystem, like everybody involved here.
Sure.
But ultimately, we don't want to segment this we have to be conscious. It's very small and fragile, and we got a good thing going for us. We don't want to segment that. So we set our pride and ego aside and say, we got to balance here and say like, what is worth fighting for? What is not? What ultimately gives us the best outcome for the entire like system here, Bitcoin, Ordinals, and our business. So, we're trying to just do our best.
The decision to go forward with our own implementation in the first place was the same reason why we got into Ordinals in the first. It was a fun, new experiment, unproven, new technology. Everything is exciting when there's the race to be the first guys to do it. And if you are the first guys to do it, you get that accolade, you get all the interest and attention to your business, which is ultimately what we're trying to do as brand makers and entrepreneurs and marketers. So yeah, the decision to move forward was really the easiest one. It's like, yeah, let's do our implementation. Let's be the first to come out with it. And then everybody will just kind of pile onto ours. And when that didn't work out because there were decisions made by other people, ultimately we had to take a step back and say, hey, let's just let Casey build this thing. And when we'll do our best to be backwards compatible with the people who spent money on our implementation.
All right, final question. This is another technical one. Unless Iron you got one.
I really wanted to get a little bit of insight into, I guess, a situation developing outside of Runes, and more specifically, I guess, the industry kind of forming around BRC20s with Alex Labs and this whole Oracle network of indexers is starting to form. There's a lot of big players, I guess, are integrating into this new model, this new system. And obviously, it's not developed fully yet, but I'm wondering what your opinion on, like, I don't know, just it seems like the narrative around it they tried their hardest to make this seem as like we're heading towards the direction of like a decentralized solution for all this. Obviously, it's to improve efficiencies and whatnot.
You're basically saying there are some people on the inside and some people on the outside.
Yeah, it's kind of like typically what we've seen already happen in the past. Like, anytime some new technology emerges, whether it's NFTs, like an industry of insiders, they kind of like, form around these things, and then they push these narratives out, and they basically control the market from that point forward.
Right.
So do you see that happening, like with the BRC20, I guess, organization that is emerging?
I'll comment on that. I would say that the way that it's implemented, it's like trending towards like a centralized exchange like system, because it's sort of like this more off-chain solution. That's why that's why it's interesting to do Rune. I will also say that I have a tweet out there you guys can dig up. But I was addressing the inscription number drama, and I said basically I think it's blown out of proportion. It's sort of like a control freak, like micromanaging scenario, and by the org for owners, and and I ultimately read between the lines of that. Now I can't. I'm not going to go as far as tell you how I got this assumption or conclusion, but it seems that before we ever talked about Rune, they were already setting the market up for, they don't want to do BRC20 anymore. And my prediction was that they would do this Taproot token, Lightning token protocol. And it seems like now Rune's kind of been taking that place. But we go all the way to like the middle of this podcast. It's like, we're going to do BRC20, we're going to do Rune, then we're going to go to the Taproot or Lightning based token, whatever they call it, Lightning tokens. And then we're going to go back to Bitcoin. That's sort of what's going to happen here. That's the rolling phase. And I'm catching it through the way these behaviors are giving me all the hints I need to kind of base that timeline as I just discussed. So I think that BRC20 did the job that it needed to do to get people interested in this concept. I think it's going to be around. I think there's a lot of power behind it already. If it's just the thing that people want to use, it's the thing people want to use. We're ready for that. We're totally prepared for that.
I really like Domo, and I think that I trust his decision making around the BRC20 stuff. He's very responsive to me whenever I have questions or comments on things that he's working on. So I'm totally cool with this BRC20 cabal. Actually, I think running the BRC20 indexer is a massive undertaking for our business, and it's a big pain in our ass, and it takes our website down, and it's a big mess. So now that we have an open source implementation of this, we can look at it, we can audit it, we can say, okay, this is good. And then we don't have to manage it and keep it up. And there's costs associated with that, both in terms of our time, but also like server costs and stuff. So yeah, I'm down with the BRC20 cabal.
Let's do it, dude.
A little bit.
All right. So Randy and Josh, thank you so much for joining us. I don't want to take any more of your time. You've definitely shed some light in a lot of things, like the perspective of Bitcoin, building on Bitcoin, staying on the main chain, not going off, any secondary, third, or quaternary chains that they're going to manifest as the marketing, marketing will kind of allude to. But again, I really appreciate any final thoughts from you guys, any impending release, anything you guys want our community to kind of look forward to as far as Ordinals Wallet goes to.
Yeah, we just launched our mobile app. So it's a progressive web app. You can add to your home screen, and you're going to get notifications when you get sales on Ordinals Wallet. And the impending release that goes hand in hand with notifications is offers, which we're really excited about. So we're gonna jump on Runes as soon as that's available to us. But right now, we're getting back into the lab. We're just hitting the roadmap hard again. PWA is out right now. You can put the app on your home screen on your iPhone. You can get notifications. That's all live. And the next thing is offers. Josh, you got anything?
I think there's some stuff behind the scenes. We have some general like system efficiencies that still need addressed, but nothing that's really fun like what Randy's talking about. And overall, I think anybody watching this just having the opportunity to be able to like do this on Bitcoin means a lot to us. And I think like us, sometimes we don't actually put that message out there. So we appreciate all of our customers and the opportunity that comes with this. And we love Bitcoin, and we hope that Bitcoin succeeds. We think that it really can help make things better in the world. That's really the message, like that kind of overarches all the business and product and memes and shit talking and whatever it is that we do every day. You know, we've invested the prime of our lives in Bitcoin and Bitcoin related things. And that's where we're at right now. So we really hope for the best in terms of like the protocol development, Bitcoin itself, the ordinals, runes. We don't care so much about the politics. We're really trying to like move this thing forward. So if any Ord core people are watching, we want to be friends and work with you and try to push this forward together.
Awesome.
Yeah. I just want to say this one Henry Ford quote because I've just been reading this book. And he talks about how the value of his employees they're valued only to the extent that they feel that they can do things better in the business. So like the influence of wanting to improve the business and the fact that the business can always be improved is something that he instills in all of his employees and everyone who works in this massive company. And I think that philosophy needs to come over to Bitcoin because people take this as a threat, the way that we speak openly and honestly about how we think Bitcoin can improve. But I think the idea that everything can always be improving is a beautiful thing. And I think it's something that people should embrace more in the Bitcoin ecosystem.
Which book is that? Which book is that, Randy?
I think it's Today and Tomorrow.
Today and Tomorrow.
My Life and Work, I believe, but it's either one of those.
My Life and Work.
Okay.
My Life and Work is the one.
All right, I'm gonna check it out. I'm gonna check it out. All right, guys, I appreciate it. One thing I want to say, also, I appreciate the fact that you guys are supporting Bitmap. We didn't get to talk about that, but yeah, it's we come from the metaverse side, and Bitmap to us is a big deal for lots of reasons, but we'll have to get into that like in a different call. That way we can kind of explain, the whole
we love Bitmap
metaverse side things.
It's probably the coolest thing that's happened in recent history on Bitcoin. So
thank you.
We're totally behind that.
Yes, appreciate that. Yeah. All right, guys, I appreciate it. All the links will be in the description. Congratulations on the new application that you guys are releasing. Without that, I mean, I appreciate you guys, and we will catch you in the next podcast. Peace.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, boys.